Hello, everybody. Holly here with Reality Sandwich, and I am joined today by my friend Angus, fellow conscious agent here with Reality Sandwich. Hello, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
If you caught my last conversation with Angus, you heard a pretty fantastical story about eating LSD from a Welsh witch and taking a incredibly fantastical journey through London. If you haven't seen that, I'm dropping it in the show notes. Y'all should really watch that one. It was pretty entertaining and interesting. But today, Angus and I are chatting about something a little bit different. We are going to talk about DMT and an experience that Angus had with this fantastic substance. So I will let you take it away. Tell us, set the stage for us a little bit. Tell us how DMT entered your universe.
Sure. So this is the story of how I visited a very old friend of mine from kindergarten. I went to his house, returned from his house with some contraband, one of the most potent psychedelics in the world. I then dosed said psychedelic twice. I managed to resist a potential nightmare trip. I then went on to meet a witch who was more so like a tree or a stick insect, who then reminded me the value of bravery in both a trip setting and any challenging psychedelic experience, as well as every other facet and challenge of life. So, admittedly, this story is a lot shorter than the story that Holly was just telling you about. So, if you're wanting for a much longer, involved, and far wackier story, then definitely go have a look at the LSD one. But this one is short, sharp, and sweet, so I'll try my best to keep it to that. So, yes, this all started when I got in contact with a really, really old friend from kindergarten. And he invited me over to his house, and I think there was some insider knowledge that potentially he was experienced, and I think he had been for a trip or two or something like this. So I was curious. It was the time in my life where I was very curious about psychedelics, and I really wanted to learn as much as I possibly could about them. And it's always nice to visit old friends as well. And I hadn't seen this guy in probably over a decade. So I went over to his house and we just started talking and catching up and getting along. And then eventually the conversation moved on to, well, I've actually heard, I've heard that you've had like an experience or two with these substances. And he said, well, yeah, I do actually. If you want some, I could give you some. So I thought, okay, well, fantastic. And I ended this meeting with my friend, and I returned from his house, and I had a car full of contraband because it actually turned into something more. He gave me, I think it was a San Pedro cactus as well, which of course isn't illegal at all, but I think anybody in the psychedelic community can prepare this in a certain way. Um, which I am not endorsing whatever at all. Please check the legalities of your country and county. Um, so I returned from that house with a few different substances, and amongst them was the yellow grain sand. That is DMT. That smells actually really quite marvelous to the nose, but is of course really quite potent and has some secrets and some potency hidden beneath that innocent facade. So I managed to get back home, and I went to my dad and I said, "Hey, Dad, I'm actually going to be leaving the country in a few months' time, and I thought, let's have a memorable experience together. Would you mind joining me for this DMT experience?" And my dad is a bit of a weathered soul. He's definitely been around the world. He's had dozens and dozens of experiences, and he said, like, without fear almost, he said, "Sure, let's do it." And I said, "Okay, well, I hope you're aware of like what this is. This is potentially one of the most potent psychedelics in the world. You should like really buckle up for a completely wild ride. And he said, son, please do not worry about me. Okay, like I've been on this earth for a lot longer than you have. Let's book it. Let's schedule it. So I thought, okay, let's do it like next weekend, shall we? So the weekend came around, and we decided to go up onto the balcony. So my house is actually perched up on the side of like a hilltop, and it has a phenomenal view of the city, and it stretches like all the way down through all the suburbs, and we get an amazing shot of the sunset as well. And we thought, okay, let's do this when the sun is like starting to set, and it can really set a beautiful scene here. And we were up on this balcony. In the end, we decided to move back into like the living room that was just behind the balcony instead, because we felt it was a bit more sheltered. And I got out my vaporizer, which was actually designed for, you know, vape oils and all that, but you could get an extension on the top, and you could screw this on, and then you could place anything within it. You could like set variable temperature, and I figured out like what's the best temperature to vaporize DMT, and we set about it, and we were jumping back and forth, like who was the first one to take the first dose. And my dad said, okay, you should do it, and then you should pass it to me immediately, and I'll join you in the fantastical psychedelic realm as soon as I can afterwards. So I had really, really high hopes for this, you know. I had been learning about psychedelics for months and months and months now. I had previously a small mushroom experience, and now I felt like, okay, I wanted to try like this. I wanted to try DMT. And honestly, it may have been a bit too hasty in hindsight. I think DMT is a substance that you need to like let it find you at the correct point in time. I don't think you should rush it at all. I think it should almost be like serendipitous in how it finds you. But regardless, I was a lot younger then, and I was very keen to just get into it. So we put it in to the vaporizer. I had very high expectations, and I vaporized it, and I inhaled what was only like a really small dose, and I couldn't really feel anything. So stupidly, I thought, okay, let's just take another hit here, and I did. And almost immediately after taking that second hit, things started moving and shifting far more than I was expecting. I was staring at a couch on one side of the room, and that just shifted. It just moved to the other side of the corner, and then the window started to expand, and noise really started to buzz and hum as you really started to like ascend to that state. You could really feel it sort of like culminating in the top of your head. And then the window just continued to expand, and then it just overwhelmed me. And from what I can remember, all that really happened is I passed out. And I entered what is almost identical to a dream state. I would like to say it was something different, but it was basically just like waking up from a dream, any standard dream that you may have throughout the night, and all the like typical characteristics of dreams are in there. You know, you've got like strange shifting environments. I had vague memories of like these different ephemeral landscapes, and maybe some strange sort of entities that would sort of bump into you, but it was all very, very hazy. And that is also typical of a dream as well. And, you know, when you wake up, you need to try to remember it and record it almost immediately, or it will just fade. I didn't even really have that opportunity. It faded almost immediately. I woke up what was only about 10 or 15 minutes later, and my dad was still sitting next to me. He had emerged from his psychedelic experience as well. And the first thing that I asked him was, what is the time? Like, how long has passed? Like, it feels like I was in there for maybe like an hour or something. And he was like, no, it was only 10 or 15 minutes. And that's just another thing very typical of DMT. Like, time can shorten or lengthen beyond, like, reason, what is typical of time. And,
Yeah, that part's weird. The like massive time distortion. How much you think you can possibly accomplish, but it's just been like a quick little cat nap.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So I emerged from my cat nap, and I was a little bit disappointed, mind you. Like, I had heard so many different stories. I had read a bunch of different books at this point, and I had really high hopes for what this was going to be. And I think this is like a really important lesson for anybody watching this video is, psychedelics are some of the most wild and unpredictable substances out there. You can hedge your bets and you can really like achieve the results that you may want. But at the end of the day, it is a slight roll of the dice, however much you can calculate it. And that is definitely what happened to me. But I resolved to try again, and I first got the recount from my dad of what happened to him, and his was a bit more disturbing than mine. I think this is like yet another testament to what psychedelics can be. You can hope for like rainbows and elves and rotating geometric shapes, but at the same time you can meet like some pretty spooky things out there. You could meet some darker elements, and I think what he met wasn't anything like it wasn't like a sinister entity or anything like this, but he was just shown like really quite disturbing imagery. From what I could really take from his experience, I think he like his consciousness like receded into his body and almost did like an analysis of his physical insides, and he was confronted with these images of organs, like organs in jars and organs like connected with like piping and tubing, like some really like disturbing sort of stuff here.
Science class gone wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And he didn't seem like too disturbed about it. He was like, yeah, it wasn't quite as like wondrous as everybody else is telling me about, but like maybe there's something for me to learn here. Maybe it's trying to tell me to like take better care of my body or something like this.
Right.
And I was like, all right, well, that's a great way to rationalize it. Good job. I am really set now to go and experience this again, to give it another whack. And he said, okay, well, I'm not going to join you for this one, but it's a beautiful day. You can go out into the garden. We've got this beautiful tree planted right in the center of our garden that gives fantastic shade. And I sat beneath it, and I laid out a blanket, and for some reason, I decided to get some incense sticks, and it was sandalwood. And I planted them into the ground beside me, and I lit them. And then I dosed it up again. It was like a fraction larger than the last dose. I think that was like a compromise between me like wanting more, but at the same time still being cautious of what this stuff can do. And I laid down, and I picked up my vaporizer. And I inhaled it, and I laid back, and I looked up in through the leaves and the foliage and the tree above me, and I could see the sky. And as it started to kick in, the sky really started to blacken, and this dark sort of shadow like just like enveloped my eyesight and the sky above, and the sky was filling with this really, really dark, acrid black. It was almost like ash or coal or charcoal, and it just filled and then it made it down to the sides of the sky, and then it hit the like what I could see of my surroundings around me, and then it just moved into my eyesight and like completely enveloped me in darkness. And I thought, oh God, what have I done? Like, I've bitten off way more than I can chew, and now I'm going to get absolutely slapped around by this psychedelic in the shadow realm. And like, this is terrible. I've really done it now. This is what happens when you're too ambitious, Angus. Congratulations. Now your parents are gonna find you catatonic on the grass, foam coming out of your mouth, and your eyes completely blackened over, and that's gonna be your story. Good job, buddy. so, so I I was completely enveloped in the shadow realm, and I was still staring up at the sky, and I could like barely make out like the leaves above me. Like they had a bit of like a tinted sort of like shadow effect on them, but for the most part everything was completely black. And I was starting to get scared, like of course, and I was like, okay, like how am I going to get out of this? I can really feel like anxiety rising now. Fear is starting to grip me, and I suppose with all the research that I had done about psychedelics, and the different conversations that I had with people, as well as my friend only like last week, he said, whatever you do, I think bravery and reluctance to forfeit to fear is probably one of the greatest things that you can hold by your side when you like venture into these experiences. And yeah, if I could like mark that right now for like any watcher, and anyone who is even like considering these substances, is like you need to be very brave, because it could throw anything at you. And if you're unfortunate enough to like give in to fear, then yeah, you might have like a worser experience. Or even yet, you may just be forfeiting to fear, and fear is never great in life in any way. So you're not learning a great lesson. And at the end of the day, this is what psychedelics are for. They're here to teach you lessons. And the lesson that you don't want to learn is, give up and give in to fear. So I decided to steel myself and hold a little bit of bravery by my side. And I just said, okay, let's just sit here, okay? Let's just like, don't do anything. Let's just like, just stare sternly and strongly into the sky above you, and don't shake, don't cower, don't try to move, don't try to run, don't do anything like that. Just hold your ground. And I did that, and after a while of doing that, this shimmering, glimmering light sort of like picked up in the corner of my eye, and then suddenly this figure, this entity sort of like appeared and sort of started to like move through the shadows and move towards my eye. And I paid attention to her, and I focused on her, and the more that I did that, the more the light really started to return to the environment around me. And I probably stared at her for like quite some time. I have no idea how long that time was, until I really rationalized this like darker environment that I was in. And then she suddenly spoke, and she just said in a really clear voice, like, "Hi Angus, I'm here for you. I'm trying to make this easier for you. I want to teach you a couple of lessons. I want to help you through this experience, and then you can return to waking reality." And at this point, like, whatever this figure entity was, she didn't look human. I was up for anything. I was just like, please just rescue me from the shadow realm. Like, I'm I'm ready to listen to anything that you have to tell me. So she started off by saying, okay, well, you're doing a fantastic job right now. Just steel yourself, just remain stalwart, and do not give in to fear. The next thing that I want to tell you is you're inherently quite brave. Like, throughout your life, you've really like showed this, you've showcased this in many different chapters and points throughout your life. Like, really good job. You've got a great quality here. But what I'm here to do is I'm here to remind you of this quality, okay? I think it's like fallen a bit to the wayside recently. Like, in my life, I had some recent years just before that experience where I wasn't too proud of how I really like conducted myself. I didn't really show enough courage, or I didn't really set out to do the things that I wanted to do, and I had some regrets, unfortunately. Regrets that were really just the result of like not having enough courage in the moment and doing what I needed to do. So she said, "I'm here to remind you of this. It's one of your greatest qualities, and if I remind you of this, and if you hold it true to yourself, like, it's going to serve you very, very well throughout your life, and it's going to really do some great things for you." She then continued to say a few other things to me, but unfortunately I don't really remember what she said to me after that point. The strongest point was really bravery, and that was really the only point that I wrote down about my experience afterwards. Yeah, it's really unfortunate that I didn't quite remember, the first experience as like the entirety of it, and then like the later points of the second experience. But they're so much like dreams, and really you need to treat them like that. And like, remembering what happened is amongst the most difficult things, at least for me. Maybe not for other people, but I'm not sure. So I had a conversation with her, and then she said, "Okay, well, like, this has been fantastic. I've really told you everything that I needed to tell you, and you can return to your life. Like, the mission that you've been given, things that you need to do in waking existence." And I said, "Well, thank you for this lesson. Thank you for saving me from the depths of Mordor and the Shadow Realm. I really appreciate that. You really did me a solid there." Witchy entity. And she wasn't human. She was not human at all. She was this stick insect, and her skin was made of this really hard, toughened bark. And she would only move whenever I took a breath, because DMT is like, it's really connected to your breath work. And I found that whenever I like took a new breath, the immediate environment, everything that I could see, really shifted, and she took on a new form every time I took a breath as well. She was sort of like dancing like a praying mantis in front of me while she was giving me a lesson about the value of bravery. But don't judge a book by its cover. This witch, who's a praying mantis, had some great lessons, and she was really quite friendly as well. So if you are faced with entities in this realm, don't judge them because they look strange. Judge them by the caliber of the character that exists beneath the exterior.
I like this. It's like, thanks for coming. You know what? Scoot up on out of here now. Why don't you pick yourself up off the lawn? You're going to be just great.
You're going to do a really good job, buddy. We've got some great stuff planned for you, all right?
Pat on the back.
Pat on the back. You've got this. You've got this. Keep on chugging on. Keep on doing your stuff.
It's great. She's your spirit guide. She's your spirit guide.
My spirit guide. Well, see, I'm not sure if my spirit guide is a Scotsman from my last experience or a stick insect witch from this experience. I'm not sure. Whoever meets me the second time, whoever shows up twice and is consistent, then I'll allocate them the title of spirit guide, all right?
Right.
So it's a toss-up between Scotsman and stick insect.
I think you have a whole council. God knows what you're going to encounter next. You know what I mean?
I've got a whole council. Wow.
You got a whole council of spirit guides. They're just revealing themselves one puff at a time.
Wow, they're working overtime. Wow, they've got a whole committee. Got a whole committee to help Angus out. Fantastic. So, I emerged from my experience, and I felt fantastic. Like, I had previously met a guy whilst I was studying abroad, who gave me like a complete shakedown of his entire experience, of his DMT experience. And he said, like, once you emerge from this, and if you've like really done the work you needed to do in these lessons, the sensation that you can have afterwards is like phenomenal. You feel so like supercharged, and you're both like mentally stimulated, psychologically stimulated, spiritually stimulated. You've been given like these new things to remember and to enact throughout your life, and then on top of it all, you've got like this body high as well. So I emerged, and I I picked up all my stuff and I put it down. I just started like walking around the house. Like I've got a really large garden in my house, and I just started to walk around. It was still like quite a sunny day. I was just staring at all the flowers, and everything was just so bright, and it was just so everything was just popping really. So I roamed around, and it was sort of like an integration session after your counseling session, where you can just sort of like roam around, like have a look at the birds and the bees and the flowers, and do your best to think about the lessons and how you could both employ them and how you could make the best out of them in your life in the weeks and months and years to come. And I did that, and then I returned to my dad, and my dad had, I don't know, if he was just like sitting in the lounge room or something like this, and I told him about the experience, and he said, well, I'm really happy for you, like, good job, like, it sounds like, you were a courageous lad there. I was young at the time, like, I was only 20 or 21. So I got a pat on the back from both the witch as well as my dad, and I felt super stoked about myself. And yeah, I wrote it down, and that's really it. That's really what happened in my experience. And I think there's two things that I would really like to say about this. Just the first one is, like, for viewers right now, is like, psychedelics are completely wild. You can hedge your bets, but you don't know what you're getting. So you really better hope that you have the bravery and the courage to face whatever comes your way. That would be the first thing. The second thing is, I agree with this statement that really circulates around the psychedelic community, which is, once you emerge from these really potent experiences, you feel like you have been entered in on this deep-seated universal secret that only, like, and, yeah, I really don't want to sound too poetic here, but like a secret that's like given to those who have been like initiated or something, have been like given these really entheogenic, spiritual, mysterious substances that have existed throughout most of human history and have some very interesting mysteries about them. And for those who take them, you do feel like something has been told to you. You've been let in on some sort of a secret. And I'm not sure what that secret is. Like, I'm not sure if your mind is having difficulty trying to discern between like a universal secret, or a secret that is intricate to just your universe, right? As in, like, you've been let in on a secret that is secretive to you, that is something that you need to discover about yourself and is very important for you and your universe. Or if you've been let in on, I don't know, like some really strange, I don't know, like secret that is reserved for, I don't know, only like a select few or something like this, and this is like some plan set in motion over thousands of years, and you want to join in, you want to be a part of it. And a lot of people have talked about that, and I've read a lot about it, and I agree with it now. So, yeah, those are really the two final points that I would like to make about this experience, and yeah, hope you enjoyed my story.
And don't give in to fear.
Don't give in to fear. Don't do
Don't,
that, or
don't give in to
you're not going
fear.
to have a good time at all.
You'll get stuck in the garden. You'll get stuck in the garden.
Yeah, exactly. You'll be found catatonic, foam coming out of your mouth by your parents, and then you're just going to be on the news channel, and you're really going to taint this movement because you're really going to mess it up. If some news reporters find you dead in the grass, foam coming out of your mouth, then
Don't
guess
do it.
what?
Just
You're
don't
not
do
you're
it.
not helping. You're not helping it out.
Be brave, everybody. Be brave.
Be brave. Be very brave.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I can't wait until we meet up for the next one.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. I hope everybody enjoyed the story.